Have you heard what James Carville said about Ilhan Omar? It's shocking, even for a Democratic strategist who normally defends his party's worst offenders. Your political radar is going to go haywire when you hear what Carville actually said when he called out Omar for her anti-white male rhetoric in a rare moment of Democratic honesty. But what you'll learn is even more revealing about the fractured state of the Democratic Party and their failing identity politics strategy. This isn't just infighting. It's a complete strategic meltdown that could reshape the party and the entire political landscape. And trust me, you won't believe what Carville suggested Omar should do with her political career. Let's get into it. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Look, if you like our videos and you haven't already, why don't you become a subscriber to the channel? You can hit that notification bell, smack the like button, because it does help us get our message out to more people. So, James Carville, you know him, the Democratic spin doctor extraordinaire, Bill Clinton's right-hand man, the raging Cajun himself, just had what can only be described as a moment of clarity. And guys, these moments are as rare as finding a pro-life Democrat in Congress. What caused this sudden brush with reality? None other than Representative Ilhan Omar and her greatest hits collection of anti-white male sentiment. The entire Democratic establishment might be trembling at what comes next. You see, an old Al Jazeera interview from 2018 spewed into 2019 resurfaced recently. And in it, Omar didn't just step into controversy. She dove headfirst into a pool of reverse racism that would make even the most ardent social justice warrior hide their head in shame. Okay, here's what happened. The host, Mehdi Hassan, and by the way, if you don't know him, imagine the most left-wing biased talking head you possibly can, and then multiply that by 10. He asked Omar about Islamophobia. Specifically, he wanted to know if maybe, just maybe, some of the concern about Islamic terrorism was legitimate rather than hateful. Watch what she says.
A lot of conservatives in particular would say that the rise in Islamophobia is a result not of hate, but of fear, a legitimate fear, they say, of quote-unquote jihadist terrorism, whether it's Fort Hood or San Bernardino or the recent truck attack in New York. What do you say to them?
I would say our country should be more fearful of white men across our country, because they are actually causing most of the deaths within this country. We should be profiling, monitoring, and creating policies to fight the radicalization of white men.
Now, a reasonable person, even a reasonable Democrat, if such a creature still exists, might acknowledge that terrorism concerns are complex. But not Omar. No. She went straight to blaming white men. Let that sink in a moment. A sitting congresswoman openly calling for racial profiling of white men. Just imagine if any Republican had suggested profiling any other demographic group. The media outrage would go nuclear. And this is a woman that the Democrats have been defending for all these years. But this is the world we live in now, where saying something wildly offensive about white men isn't just permitted, it's practically celebrated in certain circles. Behind closed doors, Democratic strategists must be popping champagne every time she speaks. Or at least that's what I thought until James Carville spoke up. Because here's where it gets interesting. At something called the Truth Tellers Summit, and isn't that name just deliciously ironic given what we're talking about? Carville finally had enough. And his complaint wasn't that Omar's comments were morally wrong or divisive. No, his problem was much simpler. It's really bad strategy. Give it a watch.
We need a schism. And maybe we need a schism with the so far progressive left. I want to read something. Our country should be more fearful of white men because they're causing most of the deaths within this country. Ilhan Omar. Lady, why don't you just get out the Democratic Party? Honestly, start your own movement. All right, let's do the simple math. And probably 69%, I don't know, we could call Jim Gerstein or Jeff Garrett. Roughly 69% of the people going to vote in November, maybe more. Let's do 70 for just round math, are going to be white. Of that, 48%, maybe a little more, are going to be male. So that's roughly, let's just call it 33.33% of the entire election. Well, let's just run against them because that's so smart. All right. So now we're going to have a campaign by the progressive left against white men who vote about a third of everybody that votes in an election. Why don't you, lady, start your own party? And then when it's over, if you want to caucus with the Democrats, fine. We agree with a lot of things that you do, but we don't believe we ought to be running against white men. In fact, we don't think we ought to be running against any gender, any ethnic group, any race, any religion, or anything else. These people are just helpless. They cannot be helped. There's nothing you can do to help them. They don't want to be helped. And if they had any guts, they'd start their own political party and get out of ours. Sorry.
Now, I don't often agree with James Carville. I think he's highly entertaining to watch, but in fact, I probably disagree with him about 99.9% of the time. But love him or hate him, guys, he does give out advice to help the Democratic Party based on the pulse of the American voters, the Democratic voters. And he has been desperately, for years now, trying to let the leadership of the party know that they are way out of line with the American people. At an 80-20 split, they are at 10% on this. That's how far they go beyond the strategy boundaries. Here's a more condensed version of what Carville said, but he says a couple other things. Give it a watch.
Ilhan Omar says that white men are responsible for most of the deaths in the United States. So let me get this straight. 69% of the people, I'm stuck on that number, I don't know, but 69% of the people going to vote are white. Of that, 48.5 are males. So I don't know, my rough math is 33%. Let's go out and piss off 33% of the people that vote, and that's a smart strategy. And the people that agree with her. There are people that actually agree with her. And I think these, honestly, I think these people are more trouble than they're worth.
But you kind of say, hold on,
he said he thinks that they're more trouble than they're worth. That's something that you don't hear every single day, right? A Democratic insider admitting to some of their own little darlings that they might be political liabilities rather than assets. It's like a bartender who's shocked that people are drunk after handing out free shots all night. Carville went out of his way here to let the party faithful, who he knows are watching and listening, that he thinks the party would be better off without the likes of Ilhan Omar. Now, he picked on her because she's the mouthy one who attacked white men in America. Democrat voters. And he, being a white man, absolutely has the right to fight back against that kind of despicable rhetoric. But Carville went even further, basically telling Omar to pack her bags and leave the party altogether. I mean, think about that. But then, because he's still James Carville after all, and he had to add a little Democratic Party caveat saying, we agree with a lot of things that you do, but we don't believe we ought to be running against white men. Really, James? Your party hasn't been running against white men since 2016? I guess you've been too busy spinning to notice the consistent messaging coming from your own side for the past 8 years. I have to admit, hearing Carville talk like this is almost refreshing. It's like watching someone finally admit that, yes, water is indeed wet after they argued for years that it wasn't. The Democratic Party has been playing identity politics for so long that even their own strategists are getting sick of the game. But here's the really interesting part. Carville isn't just ranting. He's looking at the math. White voters are expected to make up to 70% of the electorate in upcoming elections, with about 48% of them being male. And like he said, it gives them a 33% total vote. And Omar, she thinks a winning strategy is to demonize every single one of them. Omar is just pushing a totalitarian ideal that the leaders don't come to the people, rather the people must bend the knee to the leaders. Now, I'm not going to say what that sounds like, but let's not mistake Carville for some kind of conservative hero here. He's not having a genuine change of heart, guys. He's just worried about losing elections. This is the same guy who helped build the political machine that normalized all this madness in the first place. His party still pushes policies that most Americans, yes, including those despicable white men, can't stand. Biological males competing in women's sports. The Democrats are all for it, fighting to keep violent, illegal immigrants in the country. They'll fight tooth and nail to make that happen, demanding Elon Musk stop discovering and revealing government waste, fraud, and abuse of your taxpayer dollars that are confiscatorily taken from every paycheck. And they then label anyone who disagrees a bigot. That's the model. So while it's mildly entertaining to watch Carville wake up to reality, let's remember that he's still a part of the problem. This is like watching an arsonist complain that the fire he helped start is getting really too big. He may not be pouring gasoline on it today, but he certainly helped strike the match. What we're really seeing here is the Democratic Party starting to fracture under the weight of its own contradictions. They spent years cultivating an ideology based on dividing Americans into oppressor and oppressed groups. That's the Marxist way. And now they're shocked to discover that some people are taking that ideology to its logical conclusion. The irony is thick enough to cut with a knife. The party that claims to be fighting for unity and inclusion can't even maintain unity within its own ranks. And their idea of inclusion seems to explicitly exclude about a third of all their voters. So what's the takeaway from all this? Maybe, just maybe, Americans are getting tired of being sorted into categories based on immutable characteristics. Maybe treating people as individuals rather than as representatives of racial or gender groups is not just morally right, but politically smart too. James Carville was trying to tell them, and thankfully for the rest of us, they're not listening. So I wouldn't hold my breath waiting for the Democratic Party to learn that lesson. As long as figures like Ilhan Omar are getting platforms to spread their divisive BS, and as long as the party only objects to that rhetoric when it hurts their electoral chances rather than on principle, nothing fundamental will change. In the meantime, grab a good seat and enjoy the show, because watching Democrats like Carville finally confront the monster they helped create is kind of like political entertainment that you just can't script. All right, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.
I got saved.